Imagine waking up at 4 in the morning, not because you have to, but because something inside you burns with purpose. You walk into a cold barn, light a fire, and begin hammering molten steel with such precision that one wrong strike could destroy hours of work. This is the life of Rick Furrer, a master blacksmith who forges ancient Viking swords by hand. He doesn't need a sword. He doesn't sell them for millions. But he makes them anyway, because in those long, grueling hours of focus, he finds something most of us have lost: meaning. In a world where your phone buzzes every 30 seconds, where your mind is scattered across a dozen tabs, where you can't remember the last time you finished a thought without interruption, Rick Furrer represents something rare and powerful: the ability to do deep work. And according to Cal Newport, that ability is not just valuable, it's the key to unlocking your full potential in a distracted world. You're watching the book Sanctuary. Cal Newport is a computer science professor at Georgetown University, but he's much more than an academic. He's a rebel against the modern cult of busyness, a voice calling us back to what truly matters: focus, mastery, and meaningful work. In his groundbreaking book Deep Work, Newport doesn't just tell us that distraction is bad. He shows us, with research and real-life stories, that the ability to concentrate without distraction is becoming the most valuable skill in the 21st century economy. This book is divided into two parts. The first explains why deep work is valuable, rare, and meaningful. The second gives us 4 rules to cultivate it in our own lives. Over the next 30 minutes, we're going to walk through this book together, not as a dry summary, but as a story about what we've lost, what we can reclaim, and how mastering focus can change everything. Whether you're a student, an entrepreneur, a writer, or someone just trying to make sense of the noise, this message is for you. Let's start with a question. What does it take to succeed in today's economy? Newport opens with 3 people who seem to have figured it out. First, there's Nate Silver, the statistician who predicted the 2012 U.S. presidential election with stunning accuracy. Then there's David Heinemeier Hansen, a programmer who created Ruby on Rails and works remotely from a small town in Spain. Finally, there's John Doerr, a venture capitalist who made billions by investing early in companies like Google. These 3 people come from completely different worlds, but they share something crucial. They've learned to thrive in what economists Eric Brynjolfsson and Andrew McAfee call the Great Restructuring. This is a time when technology is advancing faster than our ability to keep up. Jobs are disappearing. Entire industries are being automated. And yet, some people are winning bigger than ever before. Why? Because they've mastered 2 core abilities. The first is the ability to quickly learn hard things. The second is the ability to produce at an elite level. And here's the secret. Both of these abilities depend on deep work. Let's break that down. Think about Nate Silver. He didn't become a genius overnight. He spent years learning how to analyze data, build models, and extract meaning from chaos. That kind of learning doesn't happen while scrolling through Twitter or answering emails. It requires intense, uninterrupted focus. Newport explains that when you learn something complex, your brain is literally rewiring itself. Neurons are firing in specific patterns, and myelin is wrapping around those neural circuits to make them faster and stronger. But here's the catch. This process only happens when you give the task your full attention. If you're distracted, if you're constantly switching between tasks, your brain can't build those connections. You end up spinning your wheels, never truly mastering anything. Now let's talk about production. It's not enough to be skilled. You also have to produce high-quality work, and you have to do it quickly. Newport introduces us to Adam Grant, a Wharton professor who became the youngest tenured professor at his university. How did he do it? By batching his deep work into long, uninterrupted stretches. During the fall semester, Grant would teach and handle administrative duties, but in the summer and over breaks, he would disappear into his research, working for days at a time without distraction. In one 3-day weekend, he wrote a paper that later became one of his most cited works. That's the power of deep work. When you eliminate distractions and focus completely on a single task, you don't just work faster, you work smarter. Your output becomes exponentially more valuable. But Newport doesn't stop there. He introduces a concept called attention residue. When you switch from task A to task B, A part of your attention remains stuck on task A. You might think you're focused on the new task, but your brain is still processing the old one. This residue builds up throughout the day, fragmenting your focus and reducing your effectiveness. The only way to avoid it is to work deeply, giving each task the full weight of your attention before moving on. Now you might be thinking, but what about people like Jack Dorsey? He runs 2 companies, Twitter and Square, and he's constantly in meetings, constantly distracted. Isn't he successful? Yes, he is. But Newport argues that Dorsey is an exception, not the rule. As a high-level executive, Dorsey's job is to make decisions and set direction. He doesn't need deep work in the same way a programmer, writer, or scientist does. For most of us, especially knowledge workers, deep work is not optional. It's essential. The economy is changing. The jobs that remain are the ones that require creativity, problem solving, and expertise. If you can't focus, if you can't learn quickly, if you can't produce at a high level, you're going to be left behind. But if you master deep work, you'll not only survive, you'll thrive. Here's the paradox. Deep work is more valuable than ever, but it's also becoming rare. Why? Because our workplaces are designed to destroy it. Newport walks us through 3 trends that are making deep work nearly impossible. First, there's the open office. Companies like Facebook and Square have embraced massive, open workspaces where hundreds of employees sit side by side with no walls, no doors, no privacy. The idea is that this encourages collaboration and spontaneity. But research shows the opposite. Open offices create constant distractions. You hear every phone call, every conversation, every keyboard click. Your brain is in a perpetual state of alert, unable to settle into deep focus. Studies have found that people in open offices are less productive, less satisfied, and more stressed than those in traditional offices. Then there's instant messaging. Tools like Slack and Microsoft Teams have become ubiquitous in the workplace. The promise is that they make communication faster and more efficient. But the reality is that they create an expectation of constant availability. You're expected to respond within minutes, sometimes seconds. And every time a message pops up, your focus is shattered. Research by Gloria Mark at UC Irvine found that it takes an average of 23 minutes to fully recover from an interruption. Imagine how many interruptions you get in a single day. Now imagine how much productive time you're losing. The third trend is social media. Even serious organizations like the New York Times are pushing their employees to maintain an active online presence. Journalists are expected to tweet, post, and engage with readers on multiple platforms. But this comes at a cost. Every minute spent on social media is a minute not spent on deep, meaningful work. Newport shares the story of a writer who felt pressured to build her brand online, only to realize that her best work came when she ignored the noise and focused on her craft. So why do these trends persist? Newport identifies 3 reasons. The first is what he calls the metric black hole. Companies don't have clear ways to measure the value of deep work, so they gravitate toward activities that are easy to quantify, like email response times or social media engagement. The second reason is the principle of least resistance. It's easier to send a quick email than to think deeply about a problem. It's easier to attend a meeting than to sit alone with a difficult task. So we default to shallow work, not because it's effective, but because it's comfortable. The third reason is what Newport calls busyness as a proxy for productivity. In the absence of clear indicators of success, we equate visible activity with productivity. We think that if we're constantly responding to emails, attending meetings, and being available, we must be doing good work. But the opposite is often true. There's also a cultural element at play. We live in what Newport calls a technopoly, a society where technology is seen as inherently good. The internet, social media, and instant communication are celebrated as symbols of progress. To push back against them feels old-fashioned, even Luddite. But Newport argues that this ideology is wrong. Just because something is new doesn't mean it's better. Just because everyone is doing it doesn't mean you should. The result of all this is that deep work is becoming a superpower. Because it's so rare, the people who can do it are disproportionately valuable. If you can cultivate a deep work ethic in a world that's constantly distracted, you'll stand out. You'll produce better work. You'll advance faster. You'll be happier. The scarcity of deep work is not a problem, it's an opportunity. Now let's talk about meaning. Because deep work isn't just about productivity or success. It's about living a rich, fulfilling life. Newport takes us back to Rick Furr, the blacksmith we met at the beginning. Furr doesn't need to forge swords. He doesn't even sell most of them. But he does it anyway, because the process gives him something money can't buy. A sense of purpose. Every hammer strike, every hour spent at the forge, is an act of creation. And in that creation, Furr finds meaning. Contrast that with the life of the average knowledge worker. You wake up, check your email, attend a few meetings, send some messages, and by the end of the day, you're exhausted. But what did you actually accomplish? It's hard to say. Your work feels disconnected, fragmented, almost meaningless. This is the curse of shallow work. It keeps you busy, but it doesn't fulfill you. Newport draws on the research of psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, who studied the concept of flow. Flow is that state where you're so absorbed in a task that you lose track of time. You're not thinking about the past or the future. You're fully present. And here's the key finding. People are happiest when they're in flow. Not when they're relaxing, not when they're on vacation, but when they're deeply engaged in challenging work. This is counterintuitive. We think we want to escape work, but the truth is, meaningful work is one of the deepest sources of happiness. Newport also introduces the idea of craftsmanship as a path to meaning. Philosophers Hubert Dreyfus and Sean Dorrance Kelly argue that in a world without clear religious or moral frameworks, craftsmanship offers a way to find purpose. When you dedicate yourself to mastering a skill, when you take pride in your work, you're not just producing output, you're cultivating a life of depth and meaning. This applies to all kinds of work. A programmer writing elegant code, a writer crafting a beautiful sentence, a scientist solving a difficult problem. All of these are acts of craftsmanship. But there's another layer to this. Newport talks about the concept of sacredness in work. Drawing on the writings of Winifred Gallagher, he explains that what we pay attention to shapes our reality. If you spend your days focused on trivial distractions, your life will feel trivial. But if you focus on meaningful, challenging work, your life will feel meaningful. This is a profound idea. It means that meaning isn't something you find. It's something you create through the quality of your attention. The takeaway is clear. A deep life is a good life. When you commit to deep work, you're not just optimizing for productivity. You're choosing a way of being in the world. You're saying that focus, mastery, and meaning matter more than likes, notifications, and shallow busyness. And in that choice, you find something rare and precious, fulfillment. Rule number 1, work deeply. Now we move into the second part of the book, where Newport gives us practical strategies for cultivating deep work. The first rule is simple but profound. Work deeply. This means creating structures and rituals that support deep focus, because willpower alone isn't enough. Newport introduces us to a concept called the eudaimonia machine, a hypothetical building designed by architect David Dewayne. The machine has 5 rooms, each serving a specific purpose. You enter through a gallery that displays inspiring examples of deep work. Then you move to a salon, a space for collaboration and conversation. Next is a library, where all past work is stored and accessible. After that comes an office for low-intensity tasks. And finally, at the deepest level, are soundproof chambers designed for uninterrupted deep work. The idea is that the physical environment can guide you into deeper states of focus. Most of us don't have access to a eudaimonia machine. We work in open offices, at kitchen tables, in coffee shops. But the principle still applies. You need to design your environment and schedule to support deep work. Newport offers 4 philosophies for doing this. The first is the monastic philosophy. This is for people who can eliminate all shallow obligations and dedicate themselves fully to deep work. Think of a novelist who disappears for months to write a book, or a scientist who retreats to a lab to conduct experiments. This approach is rare, but it's the most powerful. The second is the bimodal philosophy. This is for people who can divide their time into distinct periods, some for deep work, some for shallow work. Adam Grant, the Wharton professor, is a perfect example. He teaches during the academic year, but reserves long stretches for research. During those stretches, he works deeply, producing an enormous amount of high-quality output. The third is the rhythmic philosophy. This is the most practical for most people. It involves scheduling regular, daily sessions of deep work. Maybe it's 2 hours every morning before work. Maybe it's 3 hours every afternoon. The key is consistency. By making deep work a habit, you reduce the need for willpower and make focus automatic. The fourth is the journalistic philosophy. This is for people whose schedules are unpredictable. They squeeze in deep work whenever they can, even if it's just an hour here or there. Newport admits this is the hardest approach because it requires the ability to switch into deep focus quickly. Beyond philosophy, Newport emphasizes the importance of rituals. Where will you work? For how long? What will you do to support your focus? Maybe you brew a cup of coffee, close your door, and put your phone in another room. Maybe you go to a library or a quiet cafe. The specifics don't matter as much as the consistency. Your brain will learn to associate these rituals with deep work, making it easier to slip into focus. Newport also talks about grand gestures. Sometimes, making a significant commitment can elevate the importance of your work and help you focus. J.K. Rowling famously checked into a luxury hotel to finish the final Harry Potter book. Bill Gates takes Think Weeks, where he isolates himself in a cabin with nothing but books and papers. These gestures signal to your brain that this work matters. Finally, Newport addresses the question of collaboration. Deep work is often solitary, but that doesn't mean you should avoid all interaction. Working alongside others can create a productive energy, and bouncing ideas off colleagues can lead to breakthroughs. The key is to be intentional. Collaborate when it's useful, but protect your deep work time fiercely. Rule number 2, embrace boredom. The second rule is about training your brain to tolerate and even embrace boredom. This might sound strange, but it's essential because the biggest obstacle to deep work isn't distraction itself. It's your addiction to distraction. Newport introduces us to Adam Marlin, an Orthodox Jew who studies the Talmud every morning with a group of peers. Despite having 3 Ivy League degrees, Marlin found that his peers, many of whom had never attended elite universities, could outthink him. Why? Because they had been practicing deep focus since childhood. Their daily Talmud study was a mental workout, and over time, they had built incredible cognitive strength. The lesson is clear. Concentration is a skill, and like any skill, it must be trained. But here's the problem. Most of us have trained our brains in the opposite direction. Every time you feel a moment of boredom, waiting in line, sitting on the bus, eating lunch, you pull out your phone. You check email, scroll through social media, read the news. You're teaching your brain that discomfort is intolerable, that every idle moment must be filled with stimulation. And this is destroying your ability to focus. Research by Clifford Nass at Stanford found that chronic multitaskers are worse at filtering irrelevant information, managing working memory, and switching tasks. Their brains become addicted to distraction. Even when they try to focus, they can't. The neural pathways for sustained attention have atrophied. So how do you reverse this? Newport offers 3 strategies. The first is to schedule your internet use. Instead of using the internet whenever you want, set specific times for it. Outside those times, no internet. This forces your brain to work without distraction and strengthens your focus muscle. The second strategy is to work with Rooseveltian intensity. When Theodore Roosevelt was a student at Harvard, he had a packed schedule of classes, clubs, and social events, but he still managed to excel academically. How? By working with extreme intensity during the limited time he had. He would set aggressive deadlines for himself and work without distraction until the task was done. Newport suggests doing the same. Pick a task, set a tight deadline, and work as hard as you can to finish it. The third strategy is productive meditation. This means using physical activities, walking, jogging, driving, to think deeply about a problem. The key is to keep bringing your mind back to the problem whenever it wanders. This trains your attention and helps you develop insights you wouldn't get otherwise. Newport also suggests an unusual exercise. Memorize a deck of cards. Not because it's useful, but because it's a structured way to train your attention. You learn to hold information in your mind, visualize, and concentrate. These are the same skills you need for deep work. The underlying message is this: if you want to work deeply, you must be willing to be bored. You must resist the urge to fill every empty moment with stimulation. You must embrace the discomfort of focus. And over time, that discomfort will fade, and focus will become your natural state. Rule number 3. Quit social media. The third rule is the most controversial. Quit social media. Or at least, be far more selective about which tools you use. Newport isn't saying that social media is evil. He's saying that the any-benefit mindset, the idea that if a tool provides any benefit at all, you should use it, is deeply flawed. Think about it this way. A craftsman doesn't use every tool in the shop. A carpenter doesn't carry around a dozen hammers, just because each one has some small advantage. Instead, he carefully selects the tools that are most important for his craft. Knowledge workers should do the same. But we don't. We sign up for every new app, every new platform, because we're afraid of missing out. And in the process, we fragment our attention and dilute our effectiveness. Newport introduces the craftsman approach to tool selection. First, identify the core factors that determine success in your professional and personal life. Maybe it's producing high-quality research, building strong relationships with clients, or spending time with your family. Then, for each tool you use, ask, does this tool substantially support one of my core factors? And does the benefit outweigh the harm? If the answer is no, quit. Newport offers a practical test, the 30-day social media detox. Go 30 days without using any social media. Don't announce it. Don't make a big deal of it. Just stop. At the end of 30 days, ask yourself 2 questions. Would the last 30 days have been notably better if I had used the service? Did people care that I wasn't using it? If the answer to both questions is no, quit permanently. This might sound extreme, but Newport argues that for most people, social media provides minimal value. It's a distraction dressed up as a necessity. Yes, it's fun. Yes, it's entertaining. But it's not making you more successful, more fulfilled, or happier. In fact, it's probably doing the opposite. Newport also addresses the issue of leisure time. One reason we spend so much time on social media and entertainment websites is that we don't know what else to do with ourselves. We finish work, we're tired, and we default to the easiest, most stimulating option. But this is a mistake. Newport quotes the philosopher Arnold Bennett, who argued a century ago that how you spend your leisure time determines the quality of your life. If you fill your evenings with mindless scrolling, you'll feel empty. But if you engage in meaningful activities, reading, learning a skill, spending time with loved ones, you'll feel fulfilled. The key is to plan your leisure time in advance. Don't leave it to chance. Decide what you're going to do and commit to it. This takes effort, but it's worth it. Because when you reclaim your attention from the internet, you reclaim your life. Rule number 4, drain the shallows. The fourth and final rule is to minimize shallow work. Shallow work is the kind of work that doesn't require deep focus. Answering emails, attending meetings, filling out forms. It's necessary, but it's not valuable. And if you're not careful, it will consume your entire day. Newport shares the story of 37 Signals, a software company that experimented with a 4-day workweek. They were worried that productivity would drop, but it didn't. Why? Because employees became more protective of their time. They stopped wasting time on shallow tasks and focused on what really mattered. The lesson is clear. Shallow work expands to fill the time available. If you have 8 hours, it will take 8 hours. But if you only have 4 hours, you'll find a way to get it done in 4. So how do you drain the shallows? Newport offers several strategies. The first is to schedule every minute of your day. This doesn't mean being rigid or inflexible. It means being intentional. At the start of each day, block out your time. This for deep work, that for email, this for meetings. By doing this, you gain awareness of how you're spending your time, and you can make adjustments. The second strategy is to quantify the depth of every task. Ask yourself, how long would it take to train a recent college graduate to do this task? If the answer is a few weeks or less, it's shallow. If it would take months or years, it's deep. Use this metric to prioritize. The third strategy is to set a shallow work budget. Talk to your boss and agree on a percentage of your time that can be spent on shallow work. Maybe it's 30%. Maybe it's 50%. Once you hit that limit, you need to start saying no to shallow tasks. This forces you to be selective and protects your deep work time. Newport also advocates for fixed schedule productivity. Decide in advance when your workday ends and don't work past that time. This creates a hard deadline that forces you to prioritize. It also prevents burnout and gives you time to recharge. Finally, Newport talks about email. Email is the ultimate shallow work trap. It feels productive, but it's not. Newport offers 3 tips. First, use a sender filter. Make it harder for people to email you by requiring them to explain why they're reaching out. Second, use a process-centric approach to responses. Instead of just answering the question, close the loop by outlining next steps and expectations. Third, don't reply to everything. If an email doesn't require a response, don't send one. This might feel rude, but it's necessary to protect your time. We've reached the end of our journey through deep work. Let's step back and ask, what have we learned? We've learned that focus is a superpower. We've learned that the modern world is designed to distract us, but we can fight back. We've learned that meaning comes not from being busy, but from being fully present in our work. Bill Gates didn't build Microsoft by checking email every 5 minutes. J.K. Rowling didn't write Harry Potter while scrolling through Twitter. Ric Flair doesn't forge swords with one eye on his phone. They achieved greatness because they committed to depth. And so can you. This isn't easy. Embracing deep work means saying no to a lot of things. It means missing out on some conversations, some trends, some opportunities. It means facing the discomfort of boredom and the fear of missing out. But it also means producing work you're proud of. It means mastering skills that matter. It means living a life of purpose and meaning. Cal Newport ends his book with a simple but powerful statement. I'll live the focused life because it's the best kind there is. And he's right. In a world that's constantly trying to steal your attention, the ability to focus is the ultimate form of freedom. It's the freedom to choose what matters, to do work that counts, to build a life that's rich and fulfilling. So here's my challenge to you. Take one idea from this book and apply it this week. Maybe you'll schedule a daily deep work session. Maybe you'll quit one social media platform. Maybe you'll start planning your leisure time instead of defaulting to distraction. Whatever you choose, commit to it and see what happens. Because here's the truth. You are capable of so much more than you realize. Your mind is a powerful tool, but you've been letting it run wild. It's time to take control. It's time to embrace the deep life. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to the Book Sanctuary and let the world of words inspire your soul.